cartoony animation is exaggeration. It's exaggeration of all things. And really, there is no difference between regular animation versus cartoony animation other than just exaggeration. That's the core principle of cartooniness. It's making a character go from happy to really happy. If they're going to, let's say, throw something or like do a punch, you have a normal punch. A cartoony punch would be like you go all the way back and then you go. You're making it bigger. You're making the poses more dynamic. So just kind of as an example here, I just did a quick search here, and this is something I would recommend doing while you're trying to analyze cartoony animation, is find examples in a cartoon of just find a pose that a character does, and then look for the real pose that a character would do in real life. So, for example, I just did this quick search here, and here we have a running pose. You can see as we run, our knees don't go up really high. Even like this big sprint here, the knee is kind of lower than the hip. We don't really bring our knee higher than that. And there's that nice straight line, but this is a normal run. Now, if we look at a cartoony run, let's look at Bugs Bunny, for example. Look at how his pose works. Now let's actually move that so it's not in behind my camera. See how his knee is now higher? His legs are more tucked in. The hands are kind of exaggerated. The line of action is just more. So here we've got that line of action that kind of goes from the chest, and you can almost wrap it into the arm. It's kind of looping a little bit with the curve of the body into the arm there. That's what they're doing here, just even more so. So it's taking those elements, making them more. This goes for anything. So a very fun animation to analyze, and I think I have it on my computer somewhere, I'll have to look for it, is the baseball bugs short, where it's really just a baseball shot, but a lot of the posing is pushed to be much more dynamic. When he winds up to throw a ball, he winds up even more. I think there's one part where he actually spins. There's just that exaggeration. We see him pitching the ball here, and they exaggerate that line of action. They make it more. That really is the key. Now, oh, so easy. Exaggerate. Wowee. So simple. Why didn't we think of that? There's a little bit more to that than just make it bigger. The big thing here is that as we exaggerate, we need to fill in the blanks that reality doesn't allow us to do. So, for example, when something starts to move faster, at some point, you're going to get pops. You're going to get things that don't look right. Things are just not going to work anymore because it's just too fast or it's too dynamic. And this is where we get a few different concepts that will really help in our animation, which is smears, multiples, and lines. These are basically ways that we can connect our drawings together. Now I'm going to do a little demo in here in just a little bit. And we could go over the smears and multiples and all of this in a lot of depth, but I've actually done a few streams with those before. So I'm just going to give the links here. These are demos on what multiples and smears are, where to look for them. So right there, how to make them in Maya. And then some more cartoony notes here. So if you're looking into cartoony animation, I would recommend checking those links. Those are going to go a little bit more in depth on those individual topics. Right here, I want to kind of just tie it all into one like little package that we can kind of analyze. So smears, multiples, and lines are basically ways that connect drawings together. So let's actually go into a little bit of an example here. I'll just draw this out. So we have a sphere, and let's say it has to go from point A to point B, this way. Now we'll have the same sphere, but this is going to be the cartoony sphere. And it's going to go from point A to point B, same thing. Now let's say we're analyzing our reference and we're looking at our shot, and the typical rolling ball, or whatever it is going to be, is going to take, let's say 12, or we'll say 20 frames to get from point A to point B, which means there's going to be a little ease out. So it's going to go 1, and then 2, and we might not do 20 frames. We'll see how much we get. And 3, 4, 5, and then it'll start easing in there, and then maybe start easing in there, there. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 10. Well, it takes 10 frames to go from point A to point B. Now, that's okay. It kind of has this nice little motion, but we want to make that cartoonier, faster. And we want to make that happen in maybe 3 or 4 frames. So we want that to read very well. Now, the problem is that let's kind of put that spacing in here and just have 3 or 4 frames. So we've got 1, 2, 1, 2, and then 3, 4. Okay, it took 4 frames to get across. But look at all this big empty space here. That gap. That's the pop. That's what's going to make cartoony animation, when you first try it, look terrible, and it's not going to read. Your animation is just going to look, it's going to be ugly. Because our eye can't track what's happening here. This gap is causing our eye to go from here, and then the ball suddenly disappears. And as an audience, we're now having to look across the screen to see where it went. That's not good. We very rarely want a big gap between 2 poses, because it makes us lose our spot. That's what a pop is. So, how do we solve this? Well, stretches, multiples, smears, lines. Those are all tools that help bridge the gap. Now, let's kind of do the same thing here. So we've got that. We're going to ease out once again. So 1. Now we'll go 2. Let's smear that sphere just a little bit. So we get 2. And then we're going to go to the end here, just so we know where we're going. So there. And in the middle, we might do this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the end. But now, because we have that smear, we've bridged the gap. That's all a smear is. A multiple, any of these things is a way of allowing our eye to properly track a fast motion. That's really it. Now I did a smear here. It could have been a line. So lines are just kind of these speed lines here. That works as well. It could have been a multiple. So a multiple is you put multiple frames on one frame. So for example, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 frames. If we were using multiples, what we would do is 1, 2, let's go 3, and 3 would actually be maybe this. Those 2 spheres would be on the same frame. We would duplicate the sphere. The spacing kind of stays the same, but we're showing 2 positions on one frame. And then we might do this as number 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We could do that, or we could even do more. where we then go here. That would be 5, 6, 7. So we could do things like that. All we're doing is showing the multiple positions on one frame, and that connects the dots. So multiple smears lines, they are just concepts that we use to bridge a gap in the spacing. And there's a few very important things to keep in mind when you're thinking of this. One of them is that when people start using when they start using smears, they kind of tie it into the squash and stretch principle. It's one of the animation principles. If you have something that goes really fast, you're going to start stretching it. And when it hits the ground, you're going to squash it. Great. That is not a smear. Squash and stretch is the bounciness, the fleshiness, and the softness of something. We can use it to add a feeling of a smear or a stretch, but it is not the same thing. The big reason being is a smear, a multiple, all of these things are closer to motion blur. So if I go full screen here, we'll see if my camera has it. So if I do this, you see how my hand just kind of becomes a blur? My hand isn't actually a blur in real life. It's not just a line somehow. It's just the camera can't keep up with how fast I'm moving my hand, and it interpolates. Our eyes do the same thing. If you do this in front of your eye, as you just move your hand in front of your face, you'll notice that it blurs a little bit. Yeah, it's a lower FPS, exactly. So when you are doing that, it is not your hand squashing and stretching. It's just your eye is filling in the gaps between those motions. Now, why is this important? It's important because mass isn't lost or gained, but it's not... Let me put it this way. When we're dealing with squash and stretch, we are trying to conserve the mass. So if you have a ball that's dropping down here, as it's dropping, it'll start to stretch as it falls. But as it stretches, it gets longer, it's going to get thinner because we're conserving the mass. It has to all be the same size sphere. It can't double in size and then shrink. It has to stay the same. As it squashes, same thing. It's going to hit the ground and then squash and go out, but shrink as it comes down. It's going to conserve the mass. A smear doesn't do that. It doesn't take that into account because it's just a blur. So if we have a sphere here and we want to smear it across the screen, instead of going thinner, let's go with a really big smear. So instead of doing this where it gets super thin, that's going to be a little weird and hard to look at. You'll keep it about the same width, like that, and just smear it across the screen. So it's just, the way I like to imagine it is just imagine you have a lot of spheres kind of put over top of each other, and you're just blurring them into one shape. It's basically that. So motion blurs, smears, all of this, they do not follow the squash and stretch principle. They are something else entirely. They are a bridge to fill in the gap and to help us see fast motion. Now, how many frames we see things in real life is the... I'm not sure what you mean by that. How many frames? You mean what the human eye, the frame rate of the human eye is? I forget what it is exactly. I think it's like... It's higher than 60, I believe. I forget what the frame rate of the human eye is. Let's actually find out. Google is our friend. Okay, so it's between 30 and 60. Okay. I feel like it was higher than that, but I might be thinking of something else. So it's somewhere between 30 and 60. Apparently only 150 FPS max to experts, but psychology... Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was more like 150. Cool, someone told you to uninstall Maya. Yeah, sometimes we can't trust Google. We'll use Google to find some stuff, but then we have to go, is that right? Yeah, and there's no such thing as a human eye frame rate. That is a good point. The human eye is not a computer. It doesn't have a frame rate. It is an approximation. It's kind of like how the human eye is approximately a 45 millimeter lens. Approximately. Is it really a 45 millimeter lens? Not at all. It's the closest approximation we have. So when we say these numbers, we always have to be aware that like we're organic. Our eyes are very dependent on the light we have in the environment itself, how dry our eyes are. It changes all the time. So there is no one set number. Now, with these kind of concepts here, the smears, the multiples, all of that, how do we start transitioning that to animation? Well, let's see how we can apply it to a simple ball bounce movement. So, or just a sphere. So, I've just got a simple sphere here, and I'm just going to create a very basic animation. So, let's just see what we do. I'm going to take this and I don't want to make it too long. Let's do maybe a second. So we're going to start the sphere there, maybe end it here. And let's kind of add a little anticipation. So it'll go back. And I kind of want to arc it upwards. So we'll arc it up and then over and down. That's a little flat there. I'm just making up some animation as we go. There's no rhyme or reason for any of this. Okay, so that looks pretty terrible. At this point, I'm just going to go into the graph editor and just push some of this stuff here. So translate X, let's ease that out a little bit more. Make sure this change in direction here is a little bit stronger. And then I don't really want to overshoot this moment, but we'll see. Okay. Let's pull that back, actually. I want to get a nice impact in here. Just a little bit stronger there. Okay. So we've got something like this, ease out, and then, okay. Now, once again, we'll do the same with our Y here. So, ease out. Okay, need to ease that out a little bit more here. I want to add some weight to it, so as it comes up, we get that nice, that swoop up, that weight coming through, and then comes slamming down. Up, and then let's slam that down just a little bit. So something like that. Okay. My translate X, I feel like it's kind of sliding a little too much right here. So I'm just going to bring that back. And then I'm going to offset my Y just so we get a little bit of visual offset there. There we go. And then if I wanted to, I could add a little bounce at the end. Let's actually do that. So what is this animation? Who cares? It's really just feeling it out. So bounces, let's give it a 4-frame bounce. So I've got my keys in here. We'll keep the momentum going just a little bit here. So let that dissipate right there. Comes down. And then our bounces here. I'm just going to break the tangent. Add a little bit of a bounce here. And honestly, I should probably add one more bounce. Yeah, that's a little high. Down you go. Whoop. And then, yeah. Let's add a few more frames. There we go. So let's see how this feels. Whee, boom. So there you go. It's just a little bit of a anticipation, then it kind of throws itself across the screen. Now I could push the ending a little bit more. I want to add one more bounce and kind of taper it off. That's not the point of this. We're supposed to be just doing a quick little animation. So we've got this. Well, with this animation, it's definitely interesting, but let's say we wanted to make this more cartoony. We want to make it faster, just really hit. How do we do it? Well, we exaggerate. Now, when we exaggerate, we have to be very careful how we exaggerate. So I'm actually going to bring in another sphere here, just so we can have both at the same time. Going through the scene, and let's actually look at this just from the side view. Okay. So that we can just focus on a few basic concepts without having to worry about depth and all of that stuff. And grid, that's what I'm looking for. There we go. So we have that. The throw. There we go. So how do we translate this into a cartoony ball? How do we make the same feeling, but just more? Well, one is that we make it faster. We could make this, so right now, this sphere goes from frame 1, and then it reaches its peak here by about frame 20-ish. I would say the hold is like from 17 to 20, somewhere within there, before it then gets thrown across. So that's 17 frames just to get up to the top there. Then when it gets thrown, we'll say around from frame 22 is the moment that it really starts to speed up. It takes 22 to 23, about 3 frames to hit the ground, and then we get that little bounce. Well, we want to make it faster. We want to exaggerate. So the first thing that most people do when they're starting to do cartoony animation is that they'll just speed things up. Now, oops, I think I just closed off my music. No. Let me just open this up again super quick, because I have trouble working without music. I need something to listen to. Okay, that should be opening. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just for the sake of comparison, is I'm going to take this sphere. Let's move it. Move that one off to the side here. Move this one over there. And I'm just going to copy the animation over. So copy that. Paste it on here. Now the reason I'm doing this is simply so that we have a good comparison. So paste that. And then our translate Y, copy that onto here. So it should be the same. Yep. Okay. Aha. Wow, that didn't take too long. So we're going to speed things up. And this is what most people will do when they're looking at their reference. They'll kind of block things out and then, aha, we need to make things faster, more cartoony. Just shorten the time. Easy. So we're going to go from frame 1 to frame about 18. That's the peak here. But we want to do that really fast. So maybe 4 frames. Just go right up there. Well, maybe 6. We'll go 6 frames. So let's just take all of that down. So from frame 1, this should be on frame about 7. Now, when you do that, make sure to clean up your arcs, because things are going to look a little weird if you don't. Okay, so we're going to take only 7 frames to get up to the top there. Great. And then as it gets thrown, the other one took, it was 3 frames, I believe. 22, or we'll go 20 to 25, so 5 frames. Let's do that in 2 or 3. Again, try to go really fast. So if we've got that throw here on 9, that means it's going to hit, let's do 3 frames on 12. Like that. Yay, we've sped everything up. Now we've got cartoony animation. Well, it's definitely faster. And we can actually probably go even faster than that. And let me kind of boost that up a little bit. But is it reading? Not really. All it is a lot of fast motion. This is not cartoony. This is just sped up. It would be like if you take if ever you've seen like, is it Benny Hill? Or the like old Chaplin movies, Buster Keaton, and they're all those black and white films that are moving super fast and it's just sped up footage of people doing things. I guess it's more exaggerated, but it is not cartoony. It's just faster. It's watching something on fast forward, 2x speed. It makes things funnier, but again, not cartoony. So, what is cartoony? Well, cartoony is not just exaggerating the speed, it's exaggerating the holds. It's making things move fast when they should, and then hold longer to emphasize the contrast. That's what sped up footage doesn't have. Sped up footage is just faster all around. So if I want to make this cartoony, I want that motion up to be really fast, but then I need that hold when it kind of and then slams down. That's going to create an anticipation and that feeling of like, wait, slam down. So let's start exaggerating that a little bit. So once it gets up, maybe right here from 7 to 9, this was what used to be our hold, and it's gone. So I love this song. It's so stupid. So I'm just going to take that and push that hold quite a bit longer. So now it goes, whoop, boom. See how suddenly that feels a little bit more interesting? We're adding timing to this. Instead of just everything fast, we've got this little anticipation slams down. We're getting there. So keep in mind, when you're doing cartoony animation, it is not speeding things up only, it is exaggerating all the elements. If something's going faster, you put extra speed. If something's holding, you hold it longer. How about a little hold on the little bounce at the end? That would be a great one to put too. So instead of just at the end, we can get a little and then get that little hold there. So let's add that right in there. Now, is it going to be perfect yet? There you go. So we get a little bit of that. Again, that visual flair in there. Now, is this correct yet? Not really, because we still need to refine these motions. It's kind of too hectic right now. Now, what do I mean by hectic? Well, let's actually track our arc. So I'm going to go to animation tools, visualize, and then create editable motion trail, just so we can see what's happening. And what's up with the new light setup? Cameron actually got me a whole bunch of lights, and he set them up yesterday. We're still trying to figure out what the best setup is, but it's really nice, especially the Majora's Mask one. So yay, we've got lights now. I don't have to rely on the sunlight coming through the window to light up the background. So if we look at our spacing here, we're running into a few issues. One is that it's just not interesting. Instead of just pure, or how to put this, instead of exaggerating correctly, all I've done is speed things up, which means that at the beginning here, we have a pop. The ball just kind of snaps out of this position. And then the very next pose, pop. It just goes up. There's no ease in, ease out, none of that. That's not interesting to look at. It's just constant motion. So we want to use a little bit of our principles and exaggerate this properly. So one of the principles, and we talk about this a lot, the bouncy ball principles, is when you have a change of direction, for example, a contact on the ground or an extreme, the frame before that change is going to be higher than the frame after. That applies to a change of direction like so. So you have your extreme, frame before, frame after should be less far between the two. So here, if we look at that spacing, it's going further. That's not really working too well here. So let's start trying to apply these principles a little bit better. We'll start with our Y first, because that's going to be the big one. So as this goes down, I probably want to ease that out just a little bit more here. So it goes a little less low there, and I'm going to overshoot that just a bit. So now, as it goes back up, it's hard to see here because of the side-to-side translation. It's going to ease out just a little bit more. I could push that even more here. So it holds a little bit longer at the bottom, and then whew, now it comes up. This is acting as the anticipation and the speed up, the ease out into this fast motion. Now from here, I could really crank this up to push this hold. Right there, we're just going to focus on the beginning here. And then the movement upwards is going to be a little faster. Okay, let's look at our side-to-side motion. So right now it just kind of eases out and then just speeds up. Let's push this a little bit more. Really let that ease slowly. And then here, I'm just going to add another key. Keep easing there. Again, we're doing cartoony animation, so our exaggeration can be through the roof. So now we get a little bit of ease. Now we let it go fast. So we're giving it time to build up speed. Then as it changes direction, we don't want that feeling of a bounce. So I'm going to take that and just exaggerate that change in direction there, so we feel more momentum as it goes through. If it just kind of goes in a V shape, we're going to lose that feeling in there. And then it comes through. And then we want to get into that hold here. So let's kind of hold that, ease. And then I think I can just have it start to go a little faster right there. So it's a lot of it is shaping your curves and looking at what the feel you want is going to be. And then same thing here, I think I'm going to overshoot this just a little bit. So we just get a little bit more kind of visual interest there. Now I'm getting a little bit of a dip right in here. I think this might translate X. So let's actually update that curve. And I'm actually going to use, let's get rid of this curve here. I'm going to use the Animbot motion trail. It's just a little faster and kind of updates a little bit better if it actually works. There we go. Oh, and of course I have to log in. Well, so much for that. We're going to have to use the Maya one. Okay, so let's just push our arc here a little bit more. So I want that to be nice and round. So let's go back to the Maya one. Oh no, it's not going to let me. No. Okay. I'll have to see. Always double check that your Animbot license is logged in before you start using it. I do have a license, it just keeps logging me out. Okay. So, editable motion trail. Right here. I just want to clean this up a little bit more. There you go. That's where we're getting the wiggle. Okay. So, let's see what we've got. Let's see. Getting a little dip there. I'm trying to find out what it is, but okay. Let's just add another key. If ever you're starting to get like these little weird things that are happening, try to just put in another key. And usually you'll be able to figure out what's causing it. Okay. So something like that. I think that should do it. Okay, let's see how this feels. Okay, that's feeling a little bit better. We're getting just a little bit more of a kind of anticipation at the beginning. And then it gets thrown through. But what's not working? This is the big thing with cartoony animation is you're going to exaggerate and things are going to look a little strange at first. So what's not working here? Well, for me, I want a little bit more ease on that change of direction right here. Otherwise, it just kind of looks like it bounces off an invisible wall. So how can we push this? Well, we'll just add a little bit more time here. Also, it doesn't help that these two frames are like on the same position here. So we're losing that ease. Okay. So I want to add maybe 2 frames in there. So now it comes through. And we get a little bit more of a hold here. Before the change of direction. And just shaping that curve. Okay. So it comes through. And then Here we can go faster. Because we held a little longer, it acts as an anticipation. If you anticipate a little bit more, you can move faster afterwards. So let's kind of take out some frames here. Now my curve is going to be all messed up. This is the fun part about really tweaking your curves, is you start getting some really funky kind of motions if you're not careful. So let's kind of push that a little bit more. Like so. Look at that beautiful curve. Oh, isn't it lovely? Let's clean that up a little bit. Okay. Now, we're getting that little bit of a swoop there. Let's exaggerate that. I want that to be higher by that point. So we're going to do this. Round and then over. Okay. And I think I can. Let's push this down just a little bit more here. Okay. And then ease that just a little bit more. There we go. So how is this going to feel? Oop, boom. There we go. So we get just a little bit more of a hold on the left side and then slams down. So we're exaggerating not just the motions, but the holds as well. All of that is very important, because if we're just exaggerating the speed, all it's going to be is a sped up mess. That's not really what we're looking for here. Now, what's the next thing that's going to help make this read? Well, at this point, it really depends on how far you're exaggerating. Honestly, this is reading decently right now. It's not the greatest, but there's nothing that's kind of popping too much. As I go through, we can keep track of this pretty easily. So if I kind of scrub through, we can see that the spacing of the ball never goes too far past the actual width of the sphere itself. Even here, that's pretty good, honestly. It's not bad. So let's make a version where it actually pops. Let's push this even more. And this is kind of hard to do at first when you're first starting out, because this is going to be breaking it past the that comfort zone where things are really going to start looking weird and broken. So we're pushing that hold even more at the beginning, so that when it then comes down, it just slams down. And let's actually push it even more. So it holds and then poof, right there. I think it could drop just a little faster here. Okay. So we've got a little bit of that. And then at the beginning here, let's add a little bit more of an ease out right here. So that way, as it goes up here, we get that bit more of a fast swoop. So let's just hold that way down here. Okay. So now it'll come through, hold, and then right here, we start to feel that pop right now, right through there. It comes through, up, and then pop. Now I'm getting a little bit of a corner here that I don't want, so I'm just gonna ease that just a little bit. I want to round that out. Okay. So let's see how this feels. There we go. Now we're starting to really get, it's not, we could still go even faster, but we're starting to get that feeling of a little bit of a pop right at the beginning and then right as it gets thrown. So how do we clean that up? How do we make that feel visually connected? And I could probably go even faster, honestly. Let's actually try speeding this moment up here. Like we're getting this one frame pop right there. I want to go even more. And that's a good question. Does anime follow the same cartoony principles? Pretty much, yeah. They use different tools. They'll use lines and a different kind of smear a lot of the time. But it's the same basic principle. It's that exaggeration and making sure that our eye can follow through an action nicely and clearly. If we're not able to follow an action, it doesn't work. So that's kind of the core, is that the idea that as an audience, we need to be able to see what's going on and understand what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to take one more frame out of here. Just really make that fast. So it takes 2 frames to get up there to the top. I think I'm going to ease out just a little bit more here. And it holds. And then let's just try this. I'm going to go for a 1 frame drop. This is my favorite thing about cartoony animation, is just, let's see if it'll work. Okay, cool. So, there we go. Now we're starting to get into that poppiness. It still reads okay, but it's definitely just fast and it's losing some of the charm that it had before. So, how can we make that read just a little bit better? Now I'm adding that frame back in and I'm just going to ease it out just a little bit more. So I'm still going to go for that 1 frame motion, but with just a tiny, tiny ease. So now we get that, and then that's just going to make it feel a little bit more appealing. So at this point, what we need to do is we need to connect the drawings. What's happening is that as this ball is going through the scene, there are moments where our eye can't keep up with what's going on. Like right here, our eye is starting to lose track of where this sphere is going. Let's clean this up as well, just a little bit there. I'm gonna ease out just a little bit more so we get a bit more of a pop right in there. Okay, so we're losing track right in between these 2 points. And then right here, we lose track again. How do we fix this? This is where you add in the smears, the multiples, all of that. So let's actually focus on that point first. So as we're going through, let me actually update my curve. Make sure it's actually updated. Okay. So at this point, I need to start stretching the sphere through the scene. Now, for this sphere, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to animate it moving along the line, just for the sake of cleanliness. This will make it easier to stretch because I can stretch this sphere along that axis right here. So by kind of rotating it here, I'll make it easier for me to animate this and stretch it. So if this was a human character, you would be doing this in the posing by default anyway. So I just wanted to kind of move through the scene. Let's look at it from the side view. So it comes through, kind of like it's flying through the scene. Starts to come down, down, then bounce. Okay, so let's look at our rotate Z here. Just clean it up. Don't need so many keys. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just kind of getting it so that it feels like it's a little cleaner. Then here it should be more like that. And don't let it ease into the end there. Okay. So if we look at this now, the sphere is now flying through the scene more than it's just kind of sliding. And from here, I'm just going to add a little stretch. So at the beginning here, I don't really need to add too much. It's pretty much fine where it is. It is starting to just move a little bit. That's fine. Now, as we come through here, we can start adding that extra little bit of motion in there. So it's coming through. It's starting to move pretty quick. So I want to stretch the end of the ball back to where it used to be. Just a little bit. Kind of feel that drag as if the weight is being thrust forward, but just like my hair, if I moved over to the side really quick, the hair would drag behind. I'm using the weight of the ball to drag it behind just a little bit. Right there. Now it starts to slow down. Let's bring that back into just kind of a normal state right there. Oh, whoop, comes through. And then here, once again, let's smear it. Now, with this, we're going to get a little bit of loss of weight. That's fine, as long as it's not too much. So I'm watching this, trying to connect that arc. This is the other thing with smears, is that you can really use it to emphasize an arc. And what I mean by this is, let's kind of go in the middle here. If I want to make this feel rounder, I can take this and start to shape it like so. So you can see how it's starting to kind of round out there. Even though if we look at my motion trail, it's definitely not round. It's got this sharp line there. I can use the pose of the character to create the feeling of roundness. And now here, let's really stretch that. And I'm not going to go so far that we lose all our mass. So something like that. And what I'm looking at is my spacing. So how much spacing goes between the top of the ball here to the bottom there, and then top of the ball here to the bottom there. I don't want to over connect it. So for example, and this is going to look terrible. See how the top of the ball is right there, and then the back is now behind that? That could start to create a pop. I am smearing the drawing, but I am starting to over smear it. Add a little shape there. Maybe round this out just a little bit more. Okay. So, boom. And now it slows down. Let's just get it back into its shape. Make sure I set keys on everything just to be sure. Then the center one. Okay. So now we squash it down. I might just add a little bit more stretch there before squashing it in. We hold. And then right here, we're going to add one more stretch right here. I shouldn't use the word stretch. I should say we're going to add a smear. Let's curve it just a little bit so we feel that arc. And make sure I actually set a key before that. That would help. Okay. Boom. And then we'll just zero it out again here. Okay. So we've got that. Now here we're getting into a problem. And actually let's play through it and we'll see the problem. And am I maintaining the volume of the ball while doing smears? No, I don't care about the volume of the ball. Smears are not squash and stretch. They are simply connecting images together. So now let's see what we've got. There we go. See how at the beginning there, it now feels smoother? Where we're not losing the motion of the object. That's the smears. The smears are helping us to create that extra arc and push the feeling of connectedness. Even though it's moving just as fast as it was before, we didn't change any of that. By smearing it and connecting those elements together, we create that feeling of smoothness. So right there, that's feeling pretty good at the beginning. Now, at the end, it doesn't feel quite as good. Why? Well, we're smearing it in the wrong spot. If we look at the smear, it's very thin at the end and big at the very thin at the head, I guess you could say, and very big at the butt. That would be a stretch, squash and stretch. As this thing is launching out, all of its weight would stay in the back. Think of a water balloon. If you had a water balloon and you just went straight up with it, all the weight would stay at the bottom and then the top would thin out. This loses a lot of the momentum from here. And it makes our eye stick to the top part here, higher up. We want our eye to get drawn downwards. We want that flow to go down. So I'm going to try and change this so we get that weight the other way. Let me make sure I key this so that we don't get a weird squishiness there. Okay. So we'll push that there, thin that out, and kind of shape it a little bit better there. There we go. So now it's thinner at the bottom, thicker at the, I'm saying the bottom of the sphere. It's thinner higher up, thicker lower down. And what this should do is help create that better feeling of a smear. So let's see how that feels. Much better. See how now our eyes follow that more clearly? Whereas before it was like sticking somewhere in the middle, it felt like there was a little pop still, even though it was smeared the same amount. Our smear was drawing our eye in the wrong direction. So again, this is where it's different than squash and stretch. A smear is there to lead the eye, not to follow physics. It's a motion blur. It's just a connection. So there we go. Now I'm getting some, I think I forgot to key something here. Yeah. My poor sphere was all mangled. Now my translate X is also, or sorry, yeah, right here. Translate X, it is just hitting a little too hard right there. So I'm going to ease that out a little bit more. And maybe just a little bit more of a roll there. There we go. So there we go. So let's actually turn off our motion trails here. Don't need to see those. And then just look at the spheres on their own. So you can see it's the same basic motion, but we exaggerate it. And now when you look at the first one, when we played it before on its own, like just let's move this just a little further so we can just see that. When we had done this one, it looked pretty good. It's like, oh, so interesting. It's got a nice little hold and then it gets thrown down. Wowee. Now we look at the other one, and doesn't that first one look so boring in comparison? It's just so slow. Ugh. It looks almost like it's on linear right now. The holds are non-existent. It's ugh. That's the thing with cartoony animation. It's that exaggeration, and once you exaggerate and you exaggerate properly, it still captures the same feeling, but more. It's more interesting. Everything is just more. Now, why the first sphere of the head is thinner? That one is because it's not quite as big here. So I wanted just I had a little bit more control over it. There's no hard and fast rules here. And because this one was kind of less extreme, I can use it a little bit more like a stretch, just a little bit, to help kind of add more weight to the ball. So it really depends on the situation. There's no hard and fast rule. The big thing is to keep in mind that you don't have to follow the squash and stretch rule. It is more of a design element. Now, another reason I wanted to push the bottom here is that the ball is supposed to be squashing right here at the bottom when it hits the ground. So by making it bigger here, it starts to give the feeling of squash early on. Again, it's more the design element of it, not the principle of squash and stretch. I just want to emphasize it a little bit more. So no hard and fast rules. Honestly, if I wanted to, I could go here and switch it around. So I love this song. I've never played the Monkey Island games, but I always love the music. So we could do that instead. And let's set some keys here so we don't lose our scale. So we get that. Now, if I do that, I would want to make sure that this stays a little thinner. And this gets a little wider there. Okay, and then here. There we go. Get back to shape. So we get that. There we go. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, this is a simple bouncing ball, but this applies to an entire character as well. So the same principle applies. We're bridging a gap. That's the main thing. Now, there was a question here about, I believe, practicing. Let me go up here. And I think Ice Age is a good example of cartoon animation. Yeah, pretty good, especially the later Ice Ages. Scrat is an amazing example of not only cartoon animation, but the bouncing ball. He is really just a bouncing ball with a tail. And do you... oh, no, wait. What daily exercises should I do as an inexperienced animator? Bouncing balls. Just do simple things like this. Try to capture an interesting feeling to a ball and try to exaggerate it. Make it move in a beautiful and interesting way. Make sure it feels like there's weight, that there's character. Especially when you're just starting out, this is a great exercise because everything builds off of that. I could now add a character on top of this that's kind of going, and then get that anticipation before he slams down onto the ground, maybe like a superhero or something like that. and I'm using this core motion that I've made, I know it looks appealing, I can build the entire character on top of that. So this exercise, or these types of exercises, are fantastic for learning and practicing animation. A lot of people try to kind of go too far too quick and want to do these big complex things, but really it all boils down to the basics, the core. If your core of your animation doesn't look appealing, none of the pretty stuff is going to do it. If you've got beautiful facial animation or facial poses, but the core mechanics don't work, not going to matter. So exaggerating that is going to be the best way to learn and to get better quickly. Now, there was another question about the lights. Yeah, the lights can change color. So I'm trying to figure out what color scheme works best. I think purple for the Majora's Mask over there works pretty good. It's more on that side. What's going to complement those books? And then... Actually, when I'm doing animation and when I watch the movies like Hotel Transylvania, I feel the same. Why my animation is so slow? That's exactly it. When we're animating, it's, as humans, we tend to favor what feels natural, and that's usually slower motion. And if you look at Hotel Transylvania, their motions are super fast. They have a character going from one side of the screen all the way to the other in 3 frames. That's extremely fast. And it works because they are smearing across the screen. Now, in your animation, it's really just a matter of exaggerating. And again, not just speeding up. That's the common misconception with cartoony animation, is I've just got to make everything faster, crunch in the timeline. No. If we look at our timeline here, or our graph editor, I should say, and specifically, let's look at the hold. On this one, the hold from the top kind of goes from about frame 20, well, like 18 to 22-ish. About a 4-frame hold at the top. This one, once it reaches the top here, 8 to about 13. I made it longer. It's a longer hold. I could probably put a few more frames in there, honestly. So I didn't just shrink it down. I extended it in some areas. Make the holds holdier and the fast motions faster. So it's exaggeration, not speeding up. And then it's connecting your drawings together and making sure that you're leading the audience's eye. That's the core, is that we always want to lead the audience's eye across the screen. And can I do a cartoony demo on character animation? I could. I'm going to try to do something. The big thing is it just takes time. No. Smear is what Spider-Man uses in their movies. Yeah, so you have smears, lines, multiples, and... smears, line, multiple... I'm forgetting one. And blur. That's the other one. And those are all just different ways of connecting drawings. So let's actually... this is a cool account here. If you go to Twitter, I'll give you the link. This is Animation Smears. And this is just a collection of animation smears from cartoons. So you can see there, that's a smear. So let's actually look and find a few different ones here. Okay. So here we can see a few different ones. So if you look at the eyes, those are multiples. You can see multiple copies of the eye. Now, beside the eyes, you see those lines, those brown lines that are going up? Well, those are lines. So they're mixing multiples and lines, as well as a smear. If you look at the neck, the neck is just kind of distorted and super long. That's a smear. They're using 3 different things all at once. So here we've got multiples on the hands. We're seeing 3 copies of the hand. The mouth is smearing. So a smear is just a stretch. basically. And yeah, so they're using those two there. Here we're getting mostly just smear. And those are multiples, definitely. Let's see, let's find... Okay, there we go. So that is multiples. We're not getting too much of a smear, really. We're mostly getting a line or a blur in there. So a blur is usually like when you get this and it's just kind of blurry. That's what it is. In 2D, we see that very rarely because there is no real motion blur in 2D. It's just kind of like making these fuzzy lines. You'll see that mostly in CG, where you actually have motion blur. So here, that's a beautiful smear. The whole arm is just kind of blip. And then you kind of have lines used as multiples afterwards to kind of indicate the direction. So here we've got smear, we've got multiples. You can see there's actually 3 arms in there. And then you've got some lines in there as well. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in kind of going with cartoony animation, like take a look at this and study how these poses are done. You can really see how they exaggerate a lot of things in there. So yeah, I would just analyze as much as you can, or if you find I love these. Like, Klaus is such a beautiful work of art. You would consider it like so much more realistic than like these other cartoons, but they still get away with multiples and just really exaggerating. Look at that hand. At first you don't really see where it is, but look at his hand. It's actually bent the other way, so that's technically a smear right there. It's so good. Multiples in the hand. There we're getting a little bit of more oh no, wait, there you go. It's the hand back behind. You got 3 copies of it. There's the multiple. Multiples and a smear. Multiples. So good. I didn't get to watch it this year, which is a shame. I'm so sad about that. Yeah, the Animaniacs, they're a fantastic resource for analyzing those types of things. So yeah, we've got all of these different elements and we can use them to push our animation, essentially connect moments. That's what we're doing with these. So in terms of a character demo, let's actually go into a little bit of posing, because that kind of goes into what we were talking about earlier, which was, or I should say earlier as in this month, we've been doing a lot of posing demos. Now, we know the concept of the cartoony animation now, how to connect things, the basic concept. Honestly, it goes deeper than that, but surface level, that's the core of it. So at this point, we need to start animating and using our whole character. Now, this is the first common hurdle that I see a lot of new students run into when they start trying to do cartoony animation, is that they'll start to exaggerate potentially a little bit of the timing. Honestly, most people never go far enough with the timing, as we saw with my example. Like, I just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking it, and I had a 1 frame drop at the end. We can go really far, so keep exaggerating that. But on top of that, you have to exaggerate your posing. If your posing isn't strong, if it's just kind of meh, the cartooniness isn't going to be interesting. You need good, strong posing. Now, we've talked about this before, but one thing I highly recommend doing as you're trying to get cartoony poses is to do an exploration pass on your posing. So let's see, I'm trying to think of a good pose we could do. What would be a good cartoony pose? I guess I could just go to let's go to a figure drawing site and then we'll just see what we get. Okay. So Okay, so I've just went to a figure drawing site. So here we have a few different poses. So let's actually pick this one. This is the first one that came up. And let's say this was the pose in our reference. We've got someone swinging an axe. Well, if we just took this and copied it right over, that would be great. And it could be okay. But how can we make this stronger? How can we make this pose even better than it already is? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an exploration pass. We've talked about this in many streams before, but just in case anyone's new, an exploration pass is basically where you take your pose, you analyze it, and you see where you can make it stronger and better before you even go into Maya or whatever software you're in. If you're in 2D, you want to do this before you start doing your final drawing. And this is very important because you could jump right into Maya, but if you don't know what you're headed to, or the same thing with Blender, any program really, if you don't know where you're headed to and where you're going to exaggerate, it just takes 3 times as long and you end up wasting more time than just doing a quick pass. Now, with that said, do you need to be able to draw? No, I'm not very good at drawing, especially consistently. My drawings are mostly just sketches more than anything. If you're not sure how you can draw, or you want like a quick cheat way of drawing, I shouldn't say cheat. It's just like a quick, what's the term I'm looking for? It's like a thumbnail pass, or just a quick little shorthand. That's the word I'm looking for. Shorthand way of drawing. I recommend the keyhole method, where you just draw a circle for a head. I can doodle. I don't know if I would consider drawing. So you just do a little character like this. It looks like a keyhole, like you'd see in an old Disney film. And then just add legs and arms. And you can add little eyes too. And if you've seen Hilda, you'll recognize that design as Alphys. I believe that's his name. The little elf. That he's basically this design. And this design is something that has been around in kind of the shorthand animation drawing for a long time. All I'd have to do is give him a little hat here. There we go. So it's a very good way of drawing a quick character because it gives you all the information you need. You get the angle of your hips, angle of your shoulders, and kind of the rest. If you want, you can add just a little sphere for the hands, maybe just like a little spheres for the feet, just for a little extra detail. So you don't have to be able to draw super detailed. Now, if we look at this pose, let's do a quick analysis of it first. So this is something I'll often do just in my own posing, is I want to first figure out what makes this pose interesting. So if we look at this, the main thing that we're seeing is that we get that stretch on the rib cage, that compression on the other side, and the line of action is kind of S-ing through the character a little bit. So it's kind of doing this into that other leg. And then we get the other leg coming forward. So you can see this is, I draw very sketchily when I'm analyzing. I don't want to get into a lot of details. And then we get the line of action of this arm coming in through here. Don't worry about the details. And then the other arm coming through there. And then we've got the head here. Okay, now, are the proportions right? Not at all. Who cares? This is not about analyzing proportions and all of that stuff. The legs are way too short here. This is all about just figuring out the core of your drawing. So we've got the line of action. Let's actually do that. The line of action is kind of doing this in the pose right now. And it goes into the arm a little bit as well. Okay. Well, how can I make this stronger? How can I make this pose just bigger? Well, it depends on what the goal of the pose is. If the goal of the pose is to really make this character feel like he's swinging a very heavy hammer and he's going to hit it very, very hard, then I want to push the line of action to be stronger. Right now, an S shape is not going to be the strongest shape. It's, of all the lines you have, straights, C's, and S's, S's are the weakest. It makes for poses that just don't have as much strength. To add strength, I would want to go for a straight in there somewhere. So, kind of knowing that, let's push a little bit of a straight. So we can maybe go kind of straight here and then into a bend like that. So see how that line is just a little bit stronger than our other line, which is kind of doing this. Just a little stronger. Okay. So let's build the pose off of this. And let's see. So get it right into that foot there. Get the other foot kind of going forward. And I'm going to bring it back a little bit. This is going to help add a little bit of motion to the character. If that leg is out here, it makes the character feel a lot wider. It makes a stronger pose, like he's got a solid base to work off of. But if I want the feeling of movement, I would bring this in just a little bit. This way it kind of adds to that line. Everything's kind of leaning forward a little bit. My eraser is not the right size. There we go. Okay. So we've got that. Let's push that shoulder through here. Like so. And then the other arm, we can basically keep very similar. Coming through there. And then let's clean that up just a little bit. The head, we'll keep it going forward here, just because it adds a little bit of a lead to the action. Now, again, my drawings when I'm doing this are very rough. I don't care about getting a ton of details right now. I'm just trying to get the feel. If I can feel it in these simple lines, it's going to feel better later anyway. So, we've got that. Does that feel stronger? Yeah, we've got that nice straight in there. It's really pushing that weight forward into the shoulder. We feel like this is leading a little bit more right now compared to here, where it's feeling like he's leading more in this area of the body instead of in the shoulder. You can kind of feel it in that. It's like he's leading with his lats, that muscle right here, versus leading with his shoulder, which makes it kind of feel a little weaker. Okay, so with that, how else can we push this? Now, just to show a little bit of a different way of doing this, another way I like to do these types of drawings is with just a big wide brush. If you're having trouble with a thin brush, and this is more for digital, try using a thicker brush. It makes it so that it's easier to forget about the details and focus more just on the line of action and the core. Okay, so how else can we push this? Well, one thing I feel is that we could just round it out a little bit more at the top and add more weight to the axe here. So kind of go a little bit more like that. Just really exaggerate that weight coming up and over so that we'll have more motion going down afterwards as they swing. So let's kind of try to push this here even more, maybe even add a little twist to the body there. And then if we really want to exaggerate, what happens if we take that line of action and bring that leg up? So we go into something like this. The whole shoulder is there. Let's clean up that arm. Trying to think of the forms of the arm so I get the actual proportions correct. So how's that? Well, that's definitely feeling stronger now. I like the bearded axe. So cool. There we go. So we've pushed that line of action. Our line of action is now going all the way through. We're going all the way through. We're getting that straight. And now we're using that leg to push it even more in there. So we started from this, and now we've gotten to that. And it's just analyzing and thinking through. And this takes practice. It's just doing this many times, analyzing cartoons. So what I did at the very beginning of the stream, where we looked at a run of a person, and then we looked at a run from Bugs Bunny. And look at how they exaggerate things. They bring the knees up. They add a little bit more tension. If we want this to feel like he's about to explode with energy, well, we anticipate more. We bring everything in so that it explodes bigger. So by bringing that leg up here, it'll give him momentum where he can kick down and then swing the axe down. It'll be really cool and really interesting. Versus just having the legs on the ground. Just, that's it. So this is the exploration pass. And this is where you're really going to start pushing your posing to be dynamic. Now, we can keep doing this and keep exploring, but let's say, okay, this is good enough. We've found out, yeah, this is the direction we want to push our pose. Now we go into Maya and we do that. So at this point, you've all seen me do posing demos before, I'm sure, or most of you have. So it's going to be a lot of the same thing. But we're going to try to push the pose to be close to the drawing that we made. And again, the drawing doesn't have to be fantastic. It just, at least if you have the idea of what you want, it makes a big difference. So we know we want this foot on the ground. Let's actually do this here. I'm going to key him in his default, and then we're going to show the process. That way we can compare to how it started. And when you're posing a character out, one of the big things is just get them into a pose to start with. Ooh, his poor knee. So what I mean by a pose to start with is that you are just getting the core idea in there. Don't try to get the foot perfect or the hips perfect just yet. This is really just a concept, making sure things work. Now with the hips, if that leg is going up, that hip should go up as well. That's going to help push that feeling of momentum in there. I can push the twist in the body a little bit here. Yes, strike a pose. See. So we just want to get the core elements. The foot's probably going to angle down a little bit. Or no, actually, let's go up maybe just a little so that we add a little bit more tension. Okay. The spine is going to twist around. That's going to help add a little bit of contrast and make it just feel a little stronger. And then it'll angle back this way. Now, as we look at this, we're starting to get this kind of disconnected feeling. It's like, ugh, not great. Also, the head's broken. Now, he should also be leaning back a little bit, so we get that nice stretch along there. And oh, isn't this beautiful? I think we're almost done already. I mean, come on. How can you beat this? The joy of posing. And this is again why I do an exploration pass outside of Maya. You know, as we're doing this, another key concept here is you always want to animate to your camera or pose to your camera. So let's actually make sure we have a camera to work to, or else we can still get a good pose, but we won't get our optimal pose. So let's actually get a camera in place here. Okay. So like I was saying, the reason I like to do exploration drawings outside of Maya is when you first start posing things out, it's gonna look awful. It's just gonna be blech. So by taking some time outside of Maya to understand what you're going for first, it's gonna make it much easier when you get into Maya to kind of go, oh wait, now I see what I need to do. So, for example, we've got this here. Let's let's call that version 1. Okay, what's wrong with it? So many things. One, I didn't animate the clavicles. We had a whole talk about that yesterday. Never forget your clavicles. I didn't animate the hands or pose the hands. Always pose your hands. They are part of the pose. Our line of action is wrong. Our balance is wrong. Now, when you're looking at balance, the big thing to watch out for, and let's go back to our pencil here, is look at the base of the neck and then draw a straight line down and see where it lines up with the hips and then the feet. You'll notice that the neck here is slightly ahead of the hips and slightly ahead of the foot. Here, the neck is behind the hips. That's not good. That's making him feel like he's angling backwards instead of forward. I'm losing that forward momentum. So let's angle him forward here. And all of a sudden, we're starting to get that momentum forward coming through. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, but the more I go, the more momentum I put into the character here. Okay. Already, that's feeling much better. Let's get those other elements, the clavicles. Well, let's just look at our reference. Look how high his clavicle is. The shoulder there is up to his nose. He's doing this. It's not just the rotation of his chest, it's the clavicle as well going up. Never forget your clavicles. Whoop. Just doing this is going to help a lot. Now let's actually push this arm even more to get that nice twist in there and that feeling of drag. I want that whole elbow to feel like it's dragging back behind the shoulder. The shoulder, the whole shoulder region is what's leading this action. Okay. Now it's going to look a little weird at the beginning here, but that's fine. Okay. What else can we do? Well, I can try to push the line of the spine here and crunch that side just a little bit more by using the hips more. We talked about the spine and avoiding that global straightness in the spine that tends to happen for most people when you're posing. So really fight that. Let's kind of bring him forward here just a bit. Look at that weight and momentum. I'm looking at the line of action right along the front of his body here. Even though we're looking at this view, and let's actually clean that view up here, just so we can get a better idea. Even though I'm looking at that view as my main idea, I'm going around the pose to make sure, for one, he's in balance, that everything is working correctly. Really exaggerating all of these elements. Okay. I think this arm could be twisted just a little bit more. I'm not really going to give him something to hold. At least not right away. We'll see. Okay. Now the other shoulder. If it's coming up and he's about to swing, feel it out. What does your shoulder do as you come back like that? Well, it's going to come back here. And actually, if he's going to swing, it might actually go up and just a little bit forward. Yeah, somewhere around there. So try to feel it out. See where your arm goes. The head and the neck, that's going to go forward a little bit here because of the curvature of the spine. Then the head will tilt to follow that. And then I can just add a little bit of 3/4 in there. And this is going to help push that line of action as well. Now I could push it the other way, like this. That we're seeing a little bit of that in the reference. But if I want to really exaggerate that strength, I want to push that line of action all the way through to the head. So we've got kind of two lines of action. One goes from the foot to the top of the head, one goes from the foot out to the hand or the axe. Okay. Now let's push this foot. I think I do want it up, I believe. And let's kind of raise it. No, let's do this. Bring it down. Yeah, so I'm using the lower leg here to create a arrow shape from his lower foot here, trying to create a line that leads to the knee and out and forward, trying to create this invisible connection between there. Okay, so we've got that. We'd probably add a little bit more twist to the hips, just a little. Let's pose out the hands. So the hands, I'm just going to give him a quick something to hold. So polygon cylinder. Make it a little thinner. If this was an actual scene, I'd make sure I have a proper prop in there. But with this, we can at least get a decent hand pose. And I'm going to switch to IK here, just because it's going to make it easier to keep these hands holding on. So snap to IK. Snap to IK. Make sure I actually key the IK controls. And let's get this in place here. So right around there. That's a little too thick still. So we kind of get that into position. Watch the angle of it so that it feels like it actually flows properly from all angles. The kind of thought process that I have whenever I'm posing something like this is, if I was to have this as a figurine, like one of the figurines back there, I would want it to look good from all angles. And this is not going to be something that works all the time, honestly. You're going to have poses that sometimes just don't work from a certain angle, especially when you're doing cartoony and exaggerated cartoony animation. You're going to break a pose, especially when you get into like in-betweens and stuff. But really taking the time to make sure that at least your flow and your direction is working from all angles is going to be very important. I should pose the other fingers first. Okay, so we're doing a quick hand pose here. Nothing crazy. Basically just curling the fingers around here. I'm actually going to be doing a talk on hand poses and the common issues I see with hand poses in probably sometime next week. So let's make this just a little thicker here. Kind of feels like it would break if he actually swung it. Okay. And I'm getting a little too much cup in that hand. There we go. Take your time with hand posing. It's not to say that you want to get it perfect and like perfectly polished, but don't rush it either. If you rush hand posing, you tend to lose out on a lot of good physicality that can happen in the shot and just interesting posing in general. Hand posing is way too important. You want to go quick, but get some, oop, that's a spine control. You want to get some good, decent posing. So this is where you would try it out yourself, see where your fingers kind of go when you're holding something like this. In this case, the thumb should be a little bit more this way. So we get something like that. Maybe a little looser on that knuckle there. Other hand. Let's add a little bit of cup in there. Okay. And then, oh, what control do I have there? Interesting. Oh, I grabbed the camera. Okay. There we go. So very quickly, close that in. We don't want to spend too much time on the hands. And something like that. That knuckle's a little too high. So I'm looking at this view here, trying to make sure the knuckles don't look like they're out of place. So something like that. And then there we go. So quick hand pose, quick, but definitely adds a lot there. Now I'm also just going to add a very quick facial pose. The main reason for this is that if you have a character with a face, it'll look weird if they don't have some sort of pose. Now, this is not to say you want to do a full character pose here and a full facial pose where everything is polished up. This is actually something I highly recommend against, especially when you're first starting to learn animation, is like just diving right into the face when you're trying to also do the body mechanics. Instead, try to focus on the body mechanics first. The body should feel correct before you get to the face. With that said, adding just a little bit of a default facial pose isn't a bad thing. It's mostly just to kind of get a feel for who this character is, what their attitude is, and to avoid the just kind of dead default face. The other thing I usually recommend is just using a proxy for the head. So that's just kind of taking a very basic piece of geometry and using that instead of the full character head. So put a polygon cube in front of them. So here I want to just break up the eye direction so that we feel the head and the eyes not totally connected here. It'll just make the character feel more alive. Okay, So at this point where we've got this, let's key that and see how much further we can push this. So already we're starting to get a much stronger pose, but there's a few things that I think could be stronger. One, I feel like the shoulder could lead the action a little bit more. So this is where we can take our clavicle and now we can start to translate it so that we can push that mass of the shoulder out here. So we are starting to distort the body a little bit in order to exaggerate our posing. Now, I don't want to go too far to the point where it looks broken, but just clean that up and see. Yeah, something along that should work pretty well. Okay, what else is not reading well? I feel like this leg could be pushed a little bit more. I do like it, but I don't know. I think maybe pushing it up higher here could help. Okay. What else? The other shoulder here feels... I don't feel it, really. So I'm going to push it down so that we get a better line right through both arms there. I'm going to use the elbow to help with that as well, so that we get a stronger line going up through into the shoulder. So I'm looking at all of these lines, trying to get an idea of how we can improve them. Let's take the neck. See how the neck is leaning back here? I kind of want to lean it a little bit more forward so that we get a stronger line going forward. Typically the neck doesn't really bend this way, but we're starting to exaggerate. So we can start to push the graphical elements a little bit more. Let's look at it from all angles. I feel like he's a little too flat here, so I'm going to just take the rotation and just bump it a little bit more, so we get just a little bit more of a line through there. And then this leg I feel is too in line, and that knee is kind of out of place there, so let's bring that back in. When you're doing cartoony animation, you do not have to worry about like the mechanics of it. It could be broken, but in general I like to make sure things feel decent at least. Okay, from here let's start adding the bend bows. So bend bows are great controls that basically allow you to bend shapes a lot more, especially in the arms and legs. So I'm just going to take all of these and then let's key them all here and start pushing them. So let's actually start with this upper leg. Part of the thing that's making this leg feel bleh, just not interesting, is that it's just a basic boring straight line. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to try and shape it. And let's actually make sure I shape it simply. I try not to use too many axes when I'm doing this. And I'm going to round it out a little bit. Now I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit more than I normally would. Just because we're going for more of a cartoony style here. So I'm pushing it so that we get that pressure right in the hip area. Right in there. Get that crease right there. Now, if you're lucky, some rigs can even scale up the bend bows. So if I want to feel like his muscle is contracting there and like really kind of compressing, I'll scale that up just a little bit to add more weight to it as well. Same thing with his lower leg. To get that nice pinch in there, let's just scale up that calf muscle just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to push that arc of the leg just a bit here. So now we get a much stronger line through that pose there. Now here I kind of want to do, we've got a few different things we could do. The the main thing I'm thinking of is what form do I want? How is the line going to help emphasize the motion of, or how are the lines of the leg going to help emphasize the line of action here? So if I take, for example, this line of action, I want this nice straight, and let's actually make sure I can see grease pencil. And there we go. So we've got this line here, right through here. If I go for a curvy line here, like that, so we feel that thigh muscle, it's going to, I'm going to lose some of that strength in there. So I'm thinking if I go here and try to go super straight right on the front, and then on the back, we get the shape of the leg here. That's going to help push that line of action and make it even stronger. So I'm going to use my bend bows to do just that. So I want to bring that in just a little bit more there, but then try to get as clean and straight a line as I can on that front of the leg there. So trying to straighten that as much as possible. Now, if I still want some mass in the leg, for example, with the calf muscle there, I'm just going to scale that up and then adjust it so that we just feel it a little bit more on that outside edge. So something a little bit more just like that. Just trying to push that straight through there. So we've got that. Let's do the arms. Bend bows, turn those on. We'll set a key. Okay. So here I really want to push that mass of the arm coming through. So I might scale this up just a little bit. And then push that curvature that it's creating here. Let's actually exaggerate this quite a bit. Bring this up so we feel that swoop right through. Even the elbow, let's push that a little bit. So it's just pushing that feeling of curvature right through there. Now you could really push this a lot. The reason I don't want to push it too far is I don't want to start seeing the collar of his shirt. That's going to lose some of our silhouette value. Okay, the other arm. We could push it one of two ways. We could exaggerate the curve this way to create the swoop in here and push that line flowing right into the other arm right there. So do this. Or I can build the contrast and make it feel like his bicep is compressing just a little bit more. So kind of doing this. Let's see. Which one feels better? I feel like that one's going to be a little stronger. If we exaggerate that, that's straight on the back. And then kind of the bicep curl. So it's not always just the line of action. Sometimes it's the tension that you want to build. So something like that. Let's add just a little bit of squash to the head. We're not doing much of an expression change here, but just to kind of add a little more emphasis to this. Make it a little bit more interesting. So something like that. And lastly, we can do the spine. So I'm going to turn on the free spine controls on this rig, which basically allow me to move the spine and shape that. And the big thing I want to keep is that straight. So I'm not going to exaggerate this here where we get that big bend. But what I can do is I can try to push the compression on the other side. So kind of with a mixture of scaling and kind of repositioning, I'm going to try and keep that straight here and just push that extra little curvature right in there. See how we're just getting a tiny little pinch right there? It's not much. We'll see it when we compare the before and after. But it definitely adds a lot. Basically, it's trying to get a curve versus a straight on the other side. The other thing I feel like I could do is I could bring the head down just a little bit. Just kind of make it just a little bit more dynamic here. It'll add that compression to the body there. And it'll create kind of a squash before the stretch of the impact. So we get something like that. Now this was taken, let's say we could probably push it a little bit more. Now it's starting to get into the pickiness of it. Where I feel like I'm just going to start getting into like the super nitpicky details, like the face and stuff. Maybe turn the head just a little bit more there. Yeah, that's a little bit more dynamic. Okay, we'll say this is done. So let's actually look at our journey through this. We started with this. You can see it's pretty much the same pose. It's very close in idea, but it's definitely a lot stronger. It's got a stronger line of action, there's more motion to it, and it's just more dynamic in general. Does it mean the original pose was bad? No. It's just we want to exaggerate. That's the whole point of cartoony animation. And this goes for every single pose you do. So we took this and then we did that exploration pass. And you can see my exploration pass is much closer to what we have in the final result there. We get a lot more of the elements that we saw. But I wouldn't have gotten this if I didn't do that exploration pass first. Didn't try to think of how I want to push this pose. And this is where you really have to know what you want to achieve in your animation, what the goal is, who your character is, all of this stuff. That'll help determine how you push and which direction you push it. Then from there, we took our character in his sad little default pose, and we got this. Oh, isn't it beautiful? Man, you could have called it done there. Why did I put all that extra effort? We got the basic pose in place. Just throwing the character into like the roughly approximate area. That way we can start working on the details. The reason this is important is that if you start working on the hips and just, let's say, just the hips and the legs and try to get that absolutely perfect right away, when you get to the body, you're most likely going to have to change the hips again because something with the spine is going to be different. It's going to affect things. So I like to try and get all like the placeholders in there so I know approximately where things go. And then from there, I can make sure that they all work together, especially the spine and the hips. Now, from there, the big thing is that you just need to build up the skill of knowing what you need to fix. That comes from analysis and just kind of experience of how does the rig work, or how does the human body work, I should say. So knowing that you have to rotate the hip in a certain way to get a line of action, all of that stuff is just experience and analysis. Look at reference, really analyze how the body moves. From there, we got to this, which is definitely a little stronger. It actually has a line of action now. We started polishing it up, adding the bend bows in place. And you can see, especially on the leg, how much that makes a difference of just getting that extra little bend in there. And you know what? I forgot to key my spine controls. So let me actually show this because these are going to affect the final pose as well. So There we go. So we went from that to that. And you can see it's not a huge difference, but it definitely pushes the character and then the head. Boop. Let's actually take all of this and I'm just going to key it back because it's the same thing pretty much. So there we go. That's the polish pass of the pose. Pushing the line in the leg. Really pushing that feeling that the leg is kicking forward, and we're using the bend bows to add that weight and momentum to the leg. Trying to straighten the line on the front of the leg. Honestly, we didn't get too much in there, but it's in there a little bit. Pushing the lines in the arms, and then that line in the body. That little bit of squash right in here. You can see how in the old version is kind of round and soft, whereas this we're getting kind of a straight line and then a sharper bend right here. So trying to push those little elements will bring your pose to that next level, make it more interesting. So it's all of these little things. Now I would also want to do another pass on the hands because those are not working really well. And then of course a face pass, but we'll call this done. At this point, we would then go into the next pose. So find out which pose should the character land in, how will they hit. Once we have those two keys, we in between it. And the way we in between it is the same thing basically that we were doing earlier with the bouncing ball here, where we just find our timing and then connect the drawings. That's really it. So trying to make sure that we get that nice feeling more than anything. And as we're breaking it down, it is just breaking it down. And we've talked about that a lot on the stream. Eventually, I do want to actually do a cartoony animation. It's something I'm prepping for. And then we're going to show the process of breaking it down a little bit more in there. But really, it's not that much different than what we've done here and what we've done in previous animations. It's thinking of what's going to lead. So in this case, it's going to be the shoulder leading and then the arms. So chest, shoulder, arms. And then when is the leg going to kick out? When is the head going to go? Now, there is one key difference when you are breaking a pose down in a cartoony fashion versus when you're breaking it down in a more naturalistic fashion. So for example, if you were doing a VFX style shot or more realistic, maybe like Disney Pixar-esque. And that is normally when you're breaking down a shot, you want to think of how the body works, the body mechanics. So if I'm going to lean forward here, so let's kind of go full screen here. If I'm going to bring my elbow over one way, I'm going to have the elbow lead, and that's going to pull the rest of my body. So it's elbow and then the rest. You're thinking of the body mechanics and how they're all attached. When you're doing a cartoony shot, because you're moving so fast, you might have one, maybe two frames between poses. You want to think of the graphical shapes more than anything. So let's see if we can kind of show that here just a little bit. Oh, what's the shortcut for duplicating the mesh for making duplicates for cartoony animation? The shortcut to duplicate is Control D in Maya. So if you want to duplicate something, you select the mesh, hit Control D, that'll duplicate it. And then you can make multiples or smears or things like that. In one of the previous streams, which do I still have it open here? Yeah. This one. Here is a link on how to actually create the multiples and smear. So you can see I made a smear of his arm right there. And then we've got other talks on cartoony animation here if anyone's interested. I'll post these again. So basically there's a bunch of streams on cartoony animation, multiples, smears, all of that good stuff. So let's kind of go to the 2D here. And let's say we want to animate our character here. Let's bring in our timeline. Window, timeline. There we go. Oh, wait. Window, is that timeline? I thought it was a timeline. There we go. I don't know why it didn't come up the first time. Okay. So let's go through here and let's say we've got our previous pose there. And so this is the axe pose. And we want it to hit the ground. So how do I want to draw this? I didn't leave myself much room. Let's kind of move it over here. Center him up. Okay. So we're going to hit, and we want maybe the pose to kind of hit down here. The axe is going to be kind of down, embedded into the ground. And shoulders kind of forward. This is where reference would be important. Even though you're doing a cartoony shot, you still want to have an idea of how the mechanics are going to work, what the pose is going to start from. If you're just kind of starting from nothing like I'm doing here, you're more likely to just kind of run into stuff that doesn't work. For this, we're going to not worry about it too much, but definitely look at reference. It doesn't mean you have to copy your reference, but you want to be inspired by it and see where it leads you. So I'm just kind of doing a very quick doodle here. So let's say we're going into this, where he comes down and then hits right there. And once again, I'm thinking of that line of action. I want that nice strong reversal and then a line right through in here. So we're going from that to a reverse. Okay, let's say we had to break this down between these two, and we only had maybe 1-2 frames between these. How would we do it? Well, we need to think of the lead and follow. What's going to lead, what's going to follow. We don't want to just do a straight in between, because if we did that, the head would be here, the body would be here, the hips would be there, the foot would be kind of here, and then the axe would be like somewhere in between, like right here. That would just be boring. Everything's kind of going through at the same time. Instead, what's going to lead, what's going to follow? Well, in this case, he's going down. I'd probably want to lead a little bit with the foot. Kind of have that come down here. And then as well as a little bit of the shoulder and body. So something like this. Really pushing that kind of lead through right through there. Now, so I just kind of think of my line of action here. If we have to get this in one frame, the other thing that I need to do is I need to start describing things and connecting things. So I want the body to really start to lean forward here, really add that weight to show that it's going to come down. Drag the axe back so it connects back to where it used to be. The head's going to probably be around there. And then at this point, we're already smearing it. We're dragging that body back here. And let's kind of put the other arm in place. And you can see it's super rough. I can always clean it up after. So we've got that, but we can also start doing some multiples. So we've got the smear kind of in here. Let's do another copy of the body here with the axe kind of up here. And then maybe a faint hint of it right there. So I wanted to lead with the foot. I've done that. I'm leading with the shoulder and the chest. I've got that. And then the rest is just connecting the audience. So now we get, whew. And if we turn off that, we get that. Is it great? No, super rough. But I can start planning that out. And honestly, like when I'm doing cartoony animation, this is what I do, is I just draw super rough drawings like this to get an idea of what I want that I can then refine in Maya. And that's it. So I'm thinking of the spacing of the axe. I want it to ease out and then start going faster before it hits the ground. Thinking of that spacing. I'm using that for where to position my multiples. Same thing with the head. Drag it back here. And then you've got kind of the hint of a head right there. And then the body before it hits. There we go. So it's taking all those things that we talked about and just exaggerating them. And it is what leads and how do we connect between the two poses. And we can use the speed lines, the multiples. We could add like just little lines right there to connect the axe. Even at the end here when he hits, it's off screen here, but we can add just a few extra lines to finish off that motion. So we got that nice boom, motion there. So that's pretty much it. Now, if I had time, I would actually do this in Maya. Unfortunately, I don't really have too much time left before I have to get to work. So hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully it kind of gives you ideas of how to approach cartoony animation. It really just comes down to exaggeration. That's the big thing. It's exaggerating everything. Exaggerating your pose, exaggerating your timing, not just speeding it up, making the slow moments slower, making the fast moments faster, all of that good stuff. It is exaggeration in every form. So yeah, hopefully that helps. If anyone has questions on that, definitely let me know. I know it kind of bounced around a lot, but hopefully kind of gives you ideas of how to approach. Now, in terms of practicing cartoony animation, the biggest thing I would recommend is doing master studies. Master studies are going to be what really help you understand how fast you can go, how you can make motions read correctly, and just kind of give you new ideas. So, for example, one thing I always recommend, if you're wanting to do cartoon animation, study Hotel Transylvania. Go through there, frame through it, do draw-overs. Try to recreate the animation with your own rig, or just draw it out. Try to redo it and see if you can capture that same feeling in your own shot. It's not something that you'll post later, but it's just something for yourself. And by doing that, you will start to understand what they are thinking as they are creating these really cool breakdowns and multiples and all of these things. That's going to be the absolute best way that you're going to learn cartoony animation. Hands down. Master studies. So if that's something you're interested in, do it. And let's see. You try to put what lead at the breakdown. Do you mean like what? So in terms of the lead, in the breakdown, it's whatever is going to lead the action. And this could be anything. It could be the foot that leads the action. It could be the arm. It could be the head. So for example, just a character turning without, we'll just kind of do a normal motion, not a cartoony motion. If I have a character who has to turn their head, so many things could lead the action. It could be the body that leads. So my body starts to rotate and then my head turns. So I get that. I could start with my head first. So turn my head and then the body turns. I could start with my chin. So my chin leads the action. That's the thing that's starting to move first. Then it goes over. I could lead with the top of my head and turn like that. I could lead with my eyes. So my eyes move first and then the whole head goes. That's the lead. It's whenever you're putting a breakdown, it is not just letting everything, let's say I've got a pose here and I've got a pose over there, not letting everything turn at the same time. So it's not that. robotic and very stiff. Let's say we've got our hand on the scene. We want maybe eyes to go first, then the head. So eyes lead, maybe the chin's next. So eyes, chin, body, and then hand. And that creates a breakdown, a emotion that feels more organic. So we get that. Or maybe I could lead with my hand where I'm looking at something and, oh. So you see how my hand started moving first and then everything else started going after. And the same thing happens when you come to a stop. Instead of everything chunk comes to a stop together, that feels very robotic and dead. You want things to come to a stop earlier, and that again comes from the breakdown. So as I turn, my final key is everything over here, let's say. As I'm turning, my head might reach that point first, and then everything else catches up. So my head has stopped moving before everything else. This gives you that dynamic feeling of motion. And that applies to cartoony animation or just any animation, honestly. Breakdowns are not just put a key in the middle and have things move. It is thinking of what leads, what follows, and describing the motion. Describing the motion basically means, is the head going to go straight back and forth? Or is it going to go up and then down? Is it going to go down then up? Are we going to have maybe an anticipation where instead of just turning, maybe I go, whew. So I anticipate a little bit more. That's still, you can still consider that a breakdown in some cases. So you turn back and then turn your head. So it's describing the action. How do you want the action to move? Should it be fast and super quick? Should it be anticipation and quick? Should the arc be up or down? All of that stuff. That's a breakdown. Breakdowns are something that I see a lot of people when they start learning about animation. Breakdowns are just, you've got your key poses. Breakdowns are the keys that fill in the animation between, and that's about it. Yeah, you just put them in between. Hey, there we go. Breakdowns are what create animation. Otherwise, we just have poses. Otherwise, we've created a comic book. If you look at a comic book is sequential art. It is art that creates the feeling of a story. And you could almost say the feeling of motion in some cases. The breakdowns are what take our poses in animation and turn it from a comic book to animation. And we need to describe that correctly. If we don't, it just becomes mush.